am Jackie Miller, your host of Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. The effects of narcissistic abuse are very real and can be long-lasting. Giving narcissism a name is important, and listening to our bodies is key as we try to recover from the cycle of narcissistic abuse. Dr. Justine Weber is a clinical psychologist and expert in narcissism, and she joins me today to help us all better understand this type of abuse and how we can heal. Dr. Justine Weber is here to help us gain clarity from the confusion often caused by this insidious behavior. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. I have an amazing guest on today. I'm super excited about Dr. Justine Weber. Welcome, Dr. Justine Weber.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you. You are a doctor of psychology, and you and I are colleagues, but we had the luxury of having a conversation recently. And I love your expertise on narcissism. And I want to give you credit for titling today's episode, Understanding Narcissism, Getting Clarity from Confusion, because confusion is an overriding theme in narcissistic abuse. Would you agree with that?
100%. It's usually always, I always say, if you say weird or if you're confused, stop right there. Reassess that.
Yep. We've all, or many of us have heard the term you're in a fog, you're whatnot. So I think it's super important because we can never have enough conversations for those people, maybe specifically going through divorce with someone who probably has narcissistic personality disorder or was in a relationship and is leaving. There are so many things that happen to our bodies, that happen to our brains, that we don't know why we stayed. We don't know so many aspects. And you and I started to touch on these, and I said, my audience needs to hear this. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I love this topic.
Good. Well, I know, except we were talking for hours and I'm like, okay, we got to stop and share this with the audience. So, so I wanted to let everyone know, first of all, I know I just mentioned you're a doctor of psychology. You do have a practice called Serene Shift out of Newport Beach, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So within there, I know you treat trauma, anxiety, couples counseling. What else do you want people to know in terms of what you usually treat in your practice?
Yeah. So I just see adults. I think the youngest person I've seen is, probably about 18. I see some 20-year-olds, but, the typical patient I see, weekly is really, a female between the ages of, 25 and maybe like 55. Initially started my practice specializing in anxiety, panic attacks, some OCD, depression, but it's kind of transitioned more into kind of like trauma. The biggest, the typical patient calls and they're just like, I am so unhappy. I don't know what this is, but I can't keep feeling like this. And I just need help. And so whether it's like dealing with past trauma or maybe a bad breakup or a job transition or just sadness, it's just getting more and more difficult to function. And so I kind of help them move through that and like develop healthy tools and kind of shift their mindset into a different way of thinking. I work with all my patients with like problem solving skills and how to really reduce anxiety in your life and how to kind of get clear of like, what's the problem you're trying to solve here. And then I do a little bit of testing too, I must say. Not a lot, but I
Okay.
am certified with that. I mean, I would say the typical thing is somebody comes to me with anxiety. They think it's anxiety, and I'm seeing them. And after a few weeks, I'm like, I wonder if it might be an underlying ADD. And so that would be important to tease out in terms of the treatment. So I'll do a few tests on them to confirm a diagnosis, just like computer tests.
Sure.
Yeah, and then I see couples.
Awesome. And Jude, I see you also have a podcast.
I did do a few podcasts at the beginning, just kind of, just to help patients just with kind of basic anxiety, tools
Okay.
and strategies, depression, understanding the brain and how we, form thoughts. mindfulness stuff, things like that. But yeah, it's
Okay.
not like an ongoing.
Gotcha. Well, great. I mean, at sereneshift.com, correct? That is the website.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
for folks that do even want to hear those topics, even if they're only a few episodes, super helpful. So they can go to sereneshift.com and find those. And then I know, Justine, you have a coaching perspective or part of your practice. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes. So I recently launched about, I want to say about a year ago. This is really where my passion is. This is where I come to life. In my practice, I noticed, more and more people I was working with where they maybe had a partner who was, like narcissistic, or maybe a boss or a father, and they were just struggling. I mean, as everyone knows, it like ruins lives. And
Mm,
so I just noticed that that's where I became so passionate. It was so rewarding for me to empower women
hmm
to develop skills and strategies to heal really well from these like relationships, or just to like detach from this.
Ah,
um,
good point.
Create the understanding of what is this, how to handle it. So I can't remember when I got the idea, but it just became such an interest to me, and I looked into it. And I was like, wow, could you be a psychologist and a coach? Like,
Yes, you
so
can.
I know, I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I ended up speaking to a woman. She was both. She was a psychologist and a coach. Her coaching business was something a little bit different, but I just kind of was asking her questions. I'm like, why would you do this? Like, what are
hmm
the advantages from a business perspective? So she was helping me understand it. And I thought, gosh, this could be really cool. I could work with women anywhere, not just in California.
Right.
And
Certain laws and regulations
yes,
surrounding that. Okay. Gotcha.
and just really like honing in. So yeah, so I launched it. I guess it was maybe about a year ago. So I
Okay.
just work with women, and really women who have left. I work with some women who are about to leave, but that's
Okay.
really where I've honed in on, is women who have left. And I work with them on, healing, empowering themselves, reconnecting with their core self, from this place of strength. These are all just amazing women, I must
I,
say. I love all
I
of them.
I totally agree. I always tell my clients who are, victims of narcissistic abuse, there's a common thread throughout all of them. They're extremely intelligent, they're amazing, they're empathetic,
Kind,
they're happy
creative.
when they find themselves again. They're happy, they're kind, and so it is such a pleasure and an honor to meet each and every one of these women
Yeah.
because it is a common theme. And I always say it's a sick joke that or a sick compliment, when you've been targeted by someone with a personality disorder like this, because it means you're amazing. That's who they go after.
It does.
Yeah.
They just don't know it yet. And so it's only during the healing, and then you're like,
Yeah.
wow, it
Yeah.
wasn't me. It's actually them. And I'm pretty awesome.
Yes. Yeah. So awesome. And so really quick, and going back to the coaching, I know you've kind of started recently a couple of social media platforms that you're trying to reach people with. Where are you?
So my website is Dr. Justine Weber, and it's with one B, Justine Weber. And then I have a TikTok and Instagram, and Facebook
Okay.
for this coaching business. And it's really fun. I don't take credit. I ended up hiring a marketing company because I had no idea what I was doing with social media. And I
So
was like,
smart. I think I need their number. I tried.
it's just
Ah,
really kind of daily tips, tools, strategies, things to
so
think about with
excited.
gaslighting, and how can you point out signs early on from
Yes.
behavior that you see, or even like, what somebody says, or body language, or their words,
Oh,
um, even on a first date. I mean, you can kind of pick out things on a first date, like how somebody drives, how they treat the server, things like that. So it's a
I
really
l-
fun
yeah.
platform, and it's really just kind of geared to day to day quick tips on how to heal, how to understand this, how to sharpen your radar, and really how to connect with people in a healthy way.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I'm so excited to check those out. So, kind of getting back to our topic, we're getting clarity from confusion here. One of the things that you and I had talked about was why we need to call it narcissism. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I guess first off, I'd like to preface that in no way am I suggesting to any of your listeners to call a narcissist.
Right.
No, 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 no. That is
Right.
a very, very bad thing to do. They don't care, and it's probably going to make your life worse. So,
Yep.
what I mean is, when you start to notice things, and this is why it's so important to understand it better of really what it is, what the symptoms are, what the behaviors are, what the interpersonal traits are, what the dysregulation and all of that, to really understand it. So people around you, whether it's a partner or a boss or a friend or a cousin or anybody, you identify it.
Hmm.
And I have like no tolerance how people are like hesitant to just call it narcissism, because it's like, well, but that's mean, or we
Ugh.
just don't know. And you're not diagnosing somebody. This is a way to describe somebody, just like if I were to say that you're kind, and so it's just a way to describe somebody. But when you say it and you identify it and you educate yourself, then you put yourself in a much better place to respond more appropriately and respond from a place of strength, because you can actually predict behavior
Yes.
when you really understand what you're
100%.
dealing with. Like people always say that, narcissists are unpredictable. No, they're actually not. They're
They're
actually
actually,
very predictable when you
yes, they
really
are.
understand and you get their brain and their mindset. It's not a surprise when they shift blame, when they accuse you, when they act out, when they tantrum, when they
Yeah.
all of it is actually very predictable. So you can just prepare yourself better and make decisions that are better for you,
Yeah,
healthier.
it is knowledge truly is power in this arena. And it does give you tools because I think as many of us are learning to build boundaries again after being in these
Mhm.
relationships, that education of A, what you went through, but the B, when you're back out in the world, anywhere, like you said, a boss, a relative, a friend, and you start to put together two and two, like, oh, those
Mhm.
are the traits that person has also. And you get to start making really good educated decisions. I'm not going to have them in my life anymore.
Yes.
Or I'm going to have more boundaries around that person. And so it really does give you tools you need to learn, educate, identify, and be an expert, become an expert.
Or adjust your expectations with this like relationship,
Mm, good
and
idea. Yeah, good point.
your communication with this person is going to be different. Don't personalize things that they blame you, or things like that. And so your life can actually be a lot better, if you just use these like really simple tools. And it really is, I mean, I'd have to say, once you really, I mean, I don't know about you, but about a year ago I was listening to, it was like one of these like Netflix things, and he was dealing with a psychopath, which all psychopaths are like narcissistic,
Right.
but not all narcissists are psychopathic. So
True.
he referred to it as an awakening, which I thought was a really interesting way of looking at it. He said, when I woke up and I finally realized like what this was, it was just this moment of like, oh my gosh, wow. It's like you piece everything together and everything makes sense when you're in it
Yes.
and you don't know. And it's this cloud. That's where everything is just like, it's so confusing. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with me? Second guessing. You're in this fog. But it's like when you really see it, you feel like you're the only one when you're in it and you don't understand what it is. And you're constantly
Yes.
blaming yourself and second guessing. But then when you kind of detach from that and you see it clearly,
Yeah.
everything makes sense, and it's more like a template because they
Yes.
all do
Yes.
the
Yes.
same things.
I love the awakening analogy because I kind of always say, like, everyone remembers where they were when 9/11 happened. Like, if you were
Mhm.
everyone remembers when they read about narcissism and they went, "Oh, that's what I've been dealing with. It's a thing. It's a
Yes.
thing." And you're right. It just being able to call it something and put it in a category and then realize a bunch of other people are dealing with it is such a sense of validation and relief. And
Yes.
so, yes, it's an
It's
awakening.
empowering because then it's like you know what it is. Kind of like if were like diagnosed with cancer, or somebody came to me with ADD, it's like you have to call it something. And then you're like, okay, these are the struggles that you have, and this is how you deal with it.
Yeah.
You're going to need accommodations during tests, or You're
Yeah.
going to need, possibly some like medication. It's like there's a strategy. There's
Yeah.
finally like answers. And the interesting thing is, when I was in graduate school, like I knew what narcissistic personality disorder was. I learned about it 100 years ago, and I knew all of the criteria, superficiality, and no empathy, blah blah blah. I knew all of that. I didn't understand what narcissism was until when I was going through my healing. And
Yeah.
it absolutely was one of those like flash bulb like moments where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
everything makes sense,
Yes.
and it's like
Yes.
there's something about that where the clarity, this fog begins to like dissipate, and you're just like, wow, it's very empowering. You feel stronger, you know how to handle it. But
Hmm.
I noticed that just people are nervous about calling it out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm just like, why? you know?
Yeah, I have heard that comment before about it being mean to call someone a narcissist. I was like, "Huh?" Anyway, I
But if it's
that's
the
really
truth,
it's funny that you
I
say
mean,
that because I actually specifically heard that once and was like, "Well, okay, that's not processing." But
but
anyway,
that's almost like enabling. Can you see how that's like enable being
yes,
like denial like that? How is that helping you? And
absolutely.
that's enabling the narcissist by like, well, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yes,
That's not nice. We should see
sure.
the good in other people. No,
Right,
that
right.
doesn't work.
No, no. Yeah, yeah, that's what got me into this mess in the first place. No, I'm
Yes,
kidding.
I know.
Just kidding, just kidding. But okay, so we also brought up a topic last time we talked that I'm super interested in, and it's about our bodies and listening to them and the good and the bad, and I'm just fascinated by this. And so I'm so happy that you're going to talk on this topic. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So I use the body, nervous system strategies in my practice every day. I started doing that from the very beginning because it was so literally life changing for me when I began to become more attuned to my body during my healing. And kind of like one of those flashbulb, like moments where I was like, wow, 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 wow. When I look back and remember different periods of my life, I'm like, my body was giving me all the answers the whole time. I
Yeah.
just wasn't listening. I didn't know how to,
Yeah.
and it's just what happens when you're in relationships like this. You disconnect, you disassociate, you're in denial, you're in fight or flight. So there really is this like disconnection, even though your body really is the whole time giving you the answers that
Mhm.
where it's like, hello, this is unsafe. This is toxic. This is bad for you. So I incorporate body work. I use primary emotions all the time, which are, well, there's a lot of them, but the main ones that I use is anger, fear, sadness, joy, and disgust.
Okay.
And so primary emotions are in all human beings, and we have them for survival. They give
Mm.
us information. And so when maybe you're getting activated, okay, or like triggered, you become triggered, first step is, okay, in the moment, this is an opportunity to lean in. What primary emotion are you noticing?
Mm.
And so a lot of times I'll hear, frustration or irritation or feeling overwhelmed. Okay, those are not primary emotions, those are inhibitory ones.
Mm.
Underneath that, let's peel away what primary emotion. And, it's, I would say typically it's fear, sadness, or anger
Yeah.
are probably like the typical ones. And so sadness, we oftentimes feel in our throats,
Mhm.
and fear we oftentimes experience in our belly. So this is like that kind of where you feel like somebody punched you. You get a text message and you're triggered, or an email, or your ex, is near you and you just feel it in your stomach of like, again,
Yes.
my body was telling me this the whole for so many years, and I had no idea because I just became so good at disconnecting.
Yep.
I was like
Yes.
the queen at disconnecting and disassociating, being in like denial. And so I was going through my stuff. I had incredible stomach problems. I was losing hair and sleep problems. You oftentimes have bowel problems. It just, it
Right.
really affects your body because your body's
Yes.
saying, I don't feel safe, this is
Yes.
bad, this is toxic. So going back to the sensations, and then you shift down and in your chest area, this is, I would say sadness as well.
Okay.
But we really carry emotions everywhere. And then anger is oftentimes this kind of like, where you feel it kind of more in this area. And it's like
Yes.
this
like
kind
the
of almost like
neck,
hacking.
upper
Right.
shoulders kind of. Yeah.
And so when I work with all my patients, I started incorporating this with patients who have anxiety and panic attacks,
Okay.
because these are ways to regulate the nervous system, calm the brain, balance out the brain. You
Okay.
can shift from being in the amygdala, which is fight or flight, where this is like attack mode, you're protecting yourself, but you can't think clearly when you're
Mm-hmm.
in fight or flight, when you're
No.
activated, when you're angry. And so when you use these tools and strategies, which are really simple, and then some breath work, you can regulate, the brain, and actually your amygdala calms down, and you can operate from your prefrontal cortex, so you can make decisions
Yeah.
better. You can see things more clearly. You're not activated and setting off that text or doing something that's going to hurt you later.
Right.
So what I usually do is I start with patients, and I'm like, okay, if something comes up in the session where they start crying or something, I'll say, okay, in this moment, describe the sensations in your throat, just the sensations, not any thoughts or anything like that. So
Okay.
ideas would be like, okay, it feels tight, it's dry, I feel a knot in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what type of weight would the knot be? Is it like a pebble? Is it a marble? Is it like a rock? Like, what type of weight is it? Maybe a
Interesting.
pebble. Okay, on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the most, how would you rate the sensations right now of this rock? And they might say 6.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any temperature in your throat? No, it's room temperature. Shift down to the chest. Same thing. Is it pulsating? Is it heavy? Is it tight? Can you feel your heart, pounding? Is there a weight? Yes, there's a weight. Is it maybe a hand? Is it a book? Is it, a rock? And so when we're sad or scared, we typically, it's almost like this, brick or like book size, almost
Mm-hmm.
in like rectangle
Yes.
right on your chest.
I agree with that. Yes.
And so, again, rate it, maybe a 5, and then shift down to the belly. Is it empty? Is it hollow? Does it feel like somebody's pinching something? Is it, do you feel like nauseous? Anything like that. So you're just describing in the moment what you notice and feel.
Okay.
So, and saying it out loud is incredibly helpful too, because it kind of almost begins to kind of make that separation of like what I'm experiencing. I'm just noticing in the moment. I'm the observer of it, but it's not really like who I am. I'm just noticing it in this moment, and it's going to pass. And so creating that separation. So these are really cool strategies. And then there's some breath work as well. And these are ways. And then after the tools, I'll go back and we'll start from the throat and the chest and the belly, and they'll rate it. And almost every time it's a little bit less, which is
Wow.
what you want to aim for, just slightly less, where it's more
Yes.
manageable, not like it
Yes.
goes away. If you're feeling scared, okay, that's fine. You don't have to make that go away, but lean in. What is your body telling you? What
Yeah.
do you need right now? What is this fear about? Do you feel unsafe? What do you think you are needing right now? Why is your
Yeah.
body telling you this? So these are all
Absolutely.
lifelong. I mean, even for kids. I mean, could you
Yes.
imagine if you learned this in school? Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
no. I mean, it would be amazing. And like we said earlier, it's information. And when you become so aware of what your body's doing, then you're like, oh, it's not like just happening to you. You're like, okay, it's happening, but I'm going to start. It's kind of like talking about the elephant in the room. Now I'm going to start noticing it and talking about it and calling it what it is.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
then you can begin to make like decisions
Mm,
from a better place, because in the moment, if you're triggered, I mean, everybody knows what that feels like when you're triggered and you just feel like you're falling apart. It
yes.
very much, the brain goes to this place of like all or nothing thinking, like
Yes.
this is never going to pass. It's always going to be like this. It's going to get worse. Everything is terrible. And so when you do these strategies and you kind of lean in and you actually connect and try to understand, what is my body telling me, and you lessen the sensations of it, it's just giving you information. Like, why am I afraid in this moment? Does it really match my experience, what I'm going through right now? Almost every time
Ah,
the answer is no, it doesn't.
right.
Our body, this goes back to survival. I mean, everything always goes back to survival. If,
Yes.
when we lived outside with animals, if there was a bear behind us or a lion, our body just naturally responds appropriately, because our nervous system picks up on things in the environment that normally our brain would not.
Right.
And it has to immediately respond. And so your body would just be flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and you would have the energy to start running. That almost never really actually happens to us now. That's just not like,
Right.
it's like we've evolved, but our nervous system is the same.
It's so true. We've our because the way we've evolved in society, we've confused our nervous system so much because I say nowadays, a text from your ex, your brain is makes it equivalent of a lion chasing you.
Yeah,
And
yes,
it's not you're
yes,
not going to die. If you stay in front of the line, you might, but you're not gonna die from the text. But
yes.
we have to think our way out of that. And it's like we're trying to think our way out of millions of years of DNA
I
programming,
know.
but we need to, otherwise we're hostage to this.
Totally. These are, and so these tools and strategies that are really, simple are just kind of ways, again, to lean into your nervous system and, brain and calm it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
safe. I'm okay. Thank you,
right.
body. Thank you, brain, for giving me this information, but I'm safe. I'll take it from here.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is kind of shifting gears. One thing I hear a lot from clients is, I don't know why I didn't leave earlier, or I just wish I would have left earlier, but it was hard and I haven't really thought through why I didn't. It's just a lot of questions around that. Like, for my kids, would it have been better? Just a lot of questions, sort of blaming or shaming themselves. And you and I touched on this, back when we talked too, but why is it that we stay in these relationships so long? In fact, I see this pattern a lot of 16 to 18-year marriages. I get that number a lot. I don't know what that's about. I'll have to research that on a different podcast, but they're long-term marriages
Yeah.
or relationships with people like this. Why is that?
Could not agree more. I've never heard a woman, even like a personal friend. I have friends who have, gone through this, friends, colleagues, clients, any person I work with, it's always the same thing. I should have left sooner.
Yeah.
Why did I stay so long? And then it's like that blame, that like, gosh, I should have seen this. I should have known.
Yeah.
Why didn't I see the signs? Well, those are not helpful questions, and they don't really have answers. But most
Right.
importantly, they don't give you solutions,
Yeah.
or a place to actually grow. They just keep you stuck and make you feel bad. But
They don't
it
change anything or give you any more power or control.
no,
Yeah.
no, it really does just keep you stuck. Like, why didn't I leave? Well, you didn't leave because you didn't. Just
Yeah.
keep it at that. Just give yourself grace because I didn't.
Right.
But I think, I mean, it is an interesting question why we get hooked and stay. I think the first part, why we get hooked, it really does have to do with this like charm. They're charming people. Narcissists are typically like they look good from the outside. They are well put together. They're successful. They, intelligent and, nice cars, and they come across as confident.
Hmm.
And very sadly, it depends on what theorist you go through, but there's a number of different theories, and I kind of like to combine them. But I believe that as a nation, we are actually insecure, and I think it's getting worse. And so for the victims, I believe that, if you were a very secure, confident person, then
Hmm.
you wouldn't really need somebody to be
Yeah.
kind of in awe with, or for them to give you a compliment and you're like, wow, to feel good about yourself. It's like you just are, and so I
Hmm.
think there is that piece of it where it is insecurity,
Yeah.
when you kind of look up to somebody who seems like they've got it all together. And
Good
but
point.
the interesting thing is, I think it's Sandra Brown. She does a lot of research too, and she says that actually the majority of the victims she has noticed actually are secure. She says
Okay.
like over 60% are secure. She places a lot more value on personality traits of the victim, which is agreeableness and conscientiousness.
Mm,
And that I would agree too. I feel
yeah.
like it's a high number to say that 60% are secure, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
personally haven't really seen that. I would say it's more
Yeah. I could see
insecure.
why you're like, yeah, you like agreed a little bit. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
There's just so many, factors, but I do absolutely agree with the personality traits of the victims. Going back to earlier in the podcast, like they're all women that are agreeable. They're easygoing, flexible.
Yes,
They're
yes,
they're not difficult. They're conscientious. They,
yes.
like to be good. They like to do things well. They like to keep trying. And so they
Yeah.
all have very consistent, is what I've noticed personality traits for sure. And
Yeah.
so it just becomes almost like this perfect dynamic where,
Right.
if we're insecure and we're agreeable and conscientious and we look up to them, it's like this, wow. And so there is that piece of why we get hooked, and then why we stay. It's really interesting too. I think there's a lot of reasons. And so I think for women, when you stay for a long period of time and you're invested, like nobody gets in a relationship, nobody gets married, nobody moves in with somebody thinking this is never going to work out. When,
Right.
when is my exit plan? This marriage on your wedding day, we are definitely going to end in a divorce. Like it never happens. So for women, it's like this hope, this dream, this like fantasy of like, this is going to be amazing, and they're presenting as just so well put together.
Hmm.
And so further down the road, maybe a few months, 6 months, a year, you're clearly seeing signs now, like red flags.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing of denial. Denial
Sure.
plays such a huge piece of it. It really does.
Yes.
I mean, in the dictionary under denial, it probably had a picture of my face.
Right next to mine. Right next to
Probably had
mine.
a picture of my face. It's like I just became so committed
Yeah.
to denial.
Yes.
And so it's just this combination of like, you have these personality traits where you want them to be a good person. I mean, the really interesting thing of this is like we want to believe that they're good people.
Yeah.
We want to believe that they can change. We want to believe that they're an awesome husband. They, on the other hand, want us to believe that we are less than. They want us to believe that we are
That
worth
is so
nothing.
profound.
It's just
Yes.
so
They
fascinating to me.
need us to keep us in that spot. And you're right, the architecture of the relationship is so deliberate because it's so amazing in the beginning that when it starts to deteriorate, you are denial and then you're just so hopeful it's going to go back to
Yes.
that. And then if you just try a little harder, maybe on your end, and give them a little break and give them a little room and give
He's
it's
been
so
really stressed out and he's really stressed with his
oh
job, and
all of those things. If
he's
I had a nickel for every time I said that.
and so it's like this combination of like this hope and this like denial, and hanging on to these few good times.
Yeah.
And dopamine plays a huge role
Okay, I
in
love this.
well.
Okay, yes, please proceed.
When we connect with a narcissist, like dopamine and oxytocin are present, through like trauma bonding and everything when we're connected with a person. And the interesting thing about dopamine is, again, going back to survival, it's there to really motivate us
Mm,
to keep trying. So dopamine is about craving, wanting, imagining, this. It's like planning this fun trip, this
huh,
hope, this, oh my gosh, when you meet some handsome guy, it's like, oh, and just this fantasy of, we could be
okay.
together. And so dopamine is very much part of addiction. It feels good, but it motivates you. It really drives you, and of thinking, wanting, craving.
I've never heard
And
it described like that. Okay, that makes so much
so
sense.
so serotonin is about, here and now, like this, is serotonin. It's present,
Mm,
it feels good. It's about connection, but dopamine is about craving, wanting. And so the interesting thing about dopamine is, like, not to bore your listeners, but it might put things into perspective. So going back to like the caveman days when, say, we lived outside and we're like walking forever, and we're hungry and we think, gosh, I could actually die if I don't find food. This is like really scary. And you're walking forever and you're like, wait, what is that over there? And behind this bush is this like juicy piece of steak. So when you see this, it's the element of surprise and unexpected.
huh,
Dopamine floods your brain, and acetylcholine, and the purpose is for you to remember every aspect of the location of where you found this.
oh my gosh.
And dopamine, I want more of this, I have to have this, I want more.
Wow.
And so it actually motivates you to want more of this. Fascinating thing. It's about unexpected and surprise.
Oh
So
my lord.
what does this sound like? Right?
Yeah.
Like love bombing and the honeymoon
Yes.
stage. And so, this is like the typical example might be, the woman where, she's in it for maybe a year and she's like, wow, this is unhealthy. I want out. She leaves. He love bombs her. He shows up, at the house and he's like, "Hey, I have these tickets to Hawaii. She's been talking about this for months. We're staying at, the Four Seasons. I've got tickets to the opera, everything she dreamed of." Her release of dopamine in that moment, the fact that it's unexpected and surprise is probably equivalent to like cocaine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that much like,
Wow.
and the interesting thing about dopamine is when it's unexpected and surprise like that, the amount of dopamine, we misplace the value of what is in front of us. If that makes sense. It's like
It
we
totally
play
does.
more value of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
It makes
When
so much sense. I did not understand the surprise aspect,
the
the
surprise
level
aspect of it. Mhm.
the level of dopamine, the how that programs. Okay, wow.
And then acetylcholine too, which is interesting. Like acetylcholine is there for, it's almost kind of like a flashlight target of like remembering every aspect. Again, it goes back to survival. I have to remember like where the tree was, or, is this east or west,
Yeah,
or, the sand over here, and there was a rock here. So your memory of taking in every aspect of what this is heightened.
okay.
And again, it doesn't really like make sense with what you're actually dealing with, but it
Yeah,
feels like it is,
yeah.
and so and so this is very much directly correlated with your decision making and how you are going to behave. So intermittent reinforcement, I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, is this idea of it predicts behavior. So the idea is, it goes back to psychology of the slot machines. And so slot machines, because it is intermittent when you're going to win, it's like
Mm,
you might win on the third time, the seventh time, the 12th time, 16th time. It's random. So research shows that it's this
sort of
pattern where it's intermittent. You don't know when you're going to
okay,
win,
okay,
is what keeps people from trying and wanting more. It's this hope of like next time, next time.
okay.
And then when you get it, and guess what? It's a surprise. You're like, oh my gosh. And then you want more. And
Mm,
so this plays out every time with these relationships.
wow. And I've heard the slot machine sort of analogy before, but again, Justine, this is so brilliant because not in that fashion. It's the reason you sit through all the times you don't win. And the reason you sit through all the crap because you're like hoping for the jackpot win, as an
Exactly.
analogy in your relationship. And then finally one comes in. And like you said, it's a surprise, it's a relief, the dopamine, the like, whew, and you're back on the roller coaster.
You're so excited to just keep trying and
Yeah.
continue to keep getting hurt. And, and the other thing I wanted to bring up about the why we stay too is it is this piece of there's boundary crossing and you take it. And then there's more pushing the boundaries and you take more because
Uh-huh.
you want them to be a better person and they've been stressed out at work, right? And so they keep pushing the boundaries more and more. And so it's almost like because it's very slow growing, it's harder to see how far the boundaries have been pushed.
100%.
And really, kind of like your tolerance
Yep.
becomes not stronger, but I don't even know what the word is. We have more tolerance for more pain and
Yeah.
suffering.
Yep. Oh, it absolutely makes so much sense. And so then why does it get worse when you finally leave?
So
What is that about?
So, yeah, post separation abuse
Mhm.
is very real.
Yep.
And it oftentimes does get worse after you leave. You're dealing with a narcissist where at the core they're insecure, they're entitled. And so it's a huge blow to their ego when you leave.
Mhm.
Because from their mindset, it's like, but I'm amazing and you're less than. That's not possible for you to leave me. And so it just almost, from their mindset, it becomes this punishment, this revenge. And so what you typically see, is smear campaigns. Expect the worst. They're going to directly turn your friends and family against you. They're going to negatively talk about you. Social media, posting things, lies, exaggeration. They want to bring you down. They want to punish you and hurt
Mhm.
you because you were a blow to their ego. And
Yeah.
so they want you to feel the same. And so they're going to be gossiping, maybe stalking, attacking
Yes.
you through text message, email. They use money to cut off the bank accounts, use legal stuff in courts of drawing out really, really lengthy like battles. I knew this woman who, oh my gosh, it was just incredibly, incredibly sad. But it was over 5 years and she could not finalize. She kept going back to court. And every time it was just like, whatever, I don't know, like, let's, okay, next court date. And, of course, every time she would go to court, she had PTSD. So
Yeah.
it's like her nervous system, she was losing her hair, becoming very thin, and he would not finalize. And so there was no financial agreement of like her alimony. So he was paying her rent. That was it. And
Wow.
it's like she just wanted to move on with her life. She wanted to like move,
Yeah.
to a different state and start over and start a business. And he was like, nope. And he had all the money in the world to rack up millions of dollars in attorney fees to
Mm-hmm.
punish her,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's just, there's no logic. It's so
There's
sick,
no
you know?
logic, and that's what's so hard to wrap your head around, and then even in situations where they bailed, there's still almost this woman's being left, but they start to go, "Okay, I'm gonna move on," and they're like, "Oh, no, you're not," even
Mhm.
though they've done the leaving, they're the ones that left the family, there's the ones that had the affair. There is still that mentality,
Yeah.
and that's, like, so mind-blowing because it's like, why not just move on? You got a girlfriend, you got a new life. You know what? Great. But it's the fact that you're like, "Fine, great. Let's just have this over with and move on." No, they can't even take that.
Mm-mm. No, because they want you to keep crawling back to them because
Yes.
you're less than them. And
Yes.
when you're not, even though they left or ruined things, it's like, wait, what?
Yep.
Their ego, they're entitled. It makes them look bad. And so it just, I mean, I've just heard horrific stories from women, and
Mm.
the stalking can be incredibly
Yes.
scary for sure. And so for women, it's almost like expect the worst, have a plan of how you're going to manage things,
Yeah.
through your attorney. Have a plan. If he is stalking you or you feel scared, go to the police.
Yeah.
Don't think twice about it. Like, protect yourself. Having a support system is probably one of the
Oh, yeah.
most important. You have to have your friends and family in your circle to talk to
Yep.
and to, feel safe and to help you through this. Having a support system of people just who understand and are going to be on your side, and
Right.
to get you through it. It's probably one of the most helpful. But I think having a plan is really probably the most important, because a lot of women, I mean, for me, I was kind of like, wait, what? Like, what is this?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I wish I had a plan.
100%. And, it kind of feeds back into the staying, in the relationship because I always, ask women, like, didn't you have a hunch? Like you didn't know maybe what it was and you'd never heard of post separation abuse, but something deep down inside you told you it was going to be horrific when you left. You didn't know why, how they're going to execute it. You just knew there was going to be a major punishment. And they said, yeah, yeah, you know what? You're right. I did. I just knew there was gonna be kind of a how dare you. I'd never articulated it or thought it through, but yeah,
You just
you're in.
felt it. It's kind of like, brace yourself. It's going to get
Yes.
back. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Even if
Oh,
this is like a few years, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it will pass. And
yes.
through this process, you're healing, strengthening yourself. You're going to live a much better life.
And, I have to say just in the last 5 years, from my divorce till now, I'm so excited because there are more yous, more me's, there is more and more support every day, every week,
Yes.
every year that goes by, and more awareness. And so I'm so excited for women now. And it's still not nearly enough. We haven't scratched the surface, but there is a groundswell of support happening, people getting educated, people starting businesses to help
Yes.
other, people, other
Mhm.
women. And so yeah, just start Googling, start researching, find whoever is going to work for you and help you and support you.
It's true. There is so much information, and it's free
Yeah.
online, YouTube, social media,
Yes.
TikToks, Instagram, even just buying courses, books. I mean, there's so much information out there, and it's free, and it can be so useful and help you through this process.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just so happy you exist because it is so rare. I am shocked after I got into this business and just went through what I went through. I was shocked at how many therapists or psychologists did not truly understand narcissistic personality disorder, and not just the disorder of reading it in a book, but what they're truly capable of in a relationship, and the person that they've chosen as their victim, and then things like post separation abuse.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
you're kind of a unicorn, and the fact that you now have this coaching aspect and I'm super excited for people that are listening to this. Please look up Dr. Justine Weber. And so it's drjustineweber.com.
Yes, Dr. Justine Weber with one B for
Okay.
Weber.com. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Yes, please look her up, educate yourself, get some support. There
You
are
can't
people
do
out
this
there.
alone.
You
You
can't
need
do
help.
this alone, and educate yourself for all the reasons that we talked about today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I'm a nerd, so I'm fascinated by all the dopamine stuff and acetylcholine. Haven't heard that since college, but it makes so much sense, and I think when you understand what your body's doing and why you're reacting that way, again, it's just knowledge is just power, and
Mhm.
it pulls a little bit of the power away from them.
Yes, you can respond more
You can
appropriately
respond. You can
just for
respond.
you.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
for many, many reasons, and so I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Justine.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate being on your podcast.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, hopefully we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Bye bye.
bye-bye.